Good afternoon again, everyone. I'm Fannie Glover here at the Early Care and Learning Council.
I am Akshay Khansam. I'm the Community Education Coordinator here.
And Akshay is going to be controlling all the technological stuff. She's also going to be monitoring the chat box, just in case for some of you who feel that you would prefer just providing your responses or questions in chat box. Please do so, and Akshay will read them. If you want to send it to us privately, your questions or comments privately, you can just use that drop down box and do so, and we will not read your name, we will just read the question and or comment. So, welcome. We're so glad that you have signed up to participate in this session. And the reason that I decided to do this one, because I thought, oh, it is July. July and August, people take vacation. So we won't have that many people. Well, the largest number of people signed up for this session. I think it's the topic. And we're so glad that you're here. Some of you, this is your first time. I wanted to explain to you how this all came about 2 years ago, real quickly. It was designed for the sole purpose of providing a platform where individuals could ask questions, provide comments in a safe, respectable space. That was the purpose. I will learn from you as you will learn from me, all the speakers that we bring on board. It is a learning experience, hence Learning Cafe. Now, before we get started, there are a couple of things that I'd like to share with you. And that is, this is the self-permission that I'd like for each of you to think about as we go through this. And say this either to yourself or internally, however, but this is our self-permission. I, Fannie Glover, hereby give myself permission to speak my truth, be honest, curious, candid, and constructive. It is okay if I'm imperfect with regard to talking about race, class, gender, ability, sexual orientation, and nationality or ethnicity. I will be open to feedback when the impact of my words or actions does not match my intent. It is okay if I do not know all of the answers, or if at any time my ignorance or misunderstanding become obvious. I have permission to struggle with issues, because many of us do, internally and out loud, and to be upfront and honest about my feelings. Again, in a respectful manner. I'm a product of my own identities and how they intersect with one another. I am who I am. I do not need to feel shame or guilt about what, there's a little bill in there, about what I know, but I do need to take responsibility for what I can do now. Trying to listen and learn as much as I can, testing my assumptions, assuming best intentions from others, operating under premises of no shame, no blame, no guilt, striving to change any false or inaccurate attitude, and learning what I can do to make a difference. And finally, I'd like to share with you our rules. The ground rules for today. Yes. Learning Cafe ground rules. We will listen actively and attentively, ask for clarification if you are confused, do not interrupt one another, challenge one another, but do so respectfully, critique ideas, not people, avoid put-downs, take responsibility for the quality of today's discussion, build on one another's comment, work towards shared understanding, do not monopolize the discussion, and if you are offended by anything said during discussion, acknowledge it immediately. And please, we ask for everyone, eliminate any distracting noises. I think that's pretty much it before we get started. as, because what we're ready to do now is to get started with our first video, but before we do, I want to give you a little background. Brown eyes, blue eyes experiment. On the day Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was murdered in April 1968, Jane Elliot's third graders from the small all-white town of Riceville, Iowa, came to class confused and upset. They recently had made Dr. King their hero of the month, and they couldn't understand why someone would kill him. So Elliot decided to teach her class a daring lesson in the meaning of discrimination. She wanted to show her pupils what discrimination feels like and what it can do to people. There is a part of that video experiment that Asha is getting ready to share with you.
I lost. Oh.
We're checking on the sound right now.
This is a special week. Does anybody know what it is?
National Brotherhood.
National Brotherhood Week. What's brotherhood?
Be kind to your brothers. Be kind.
Okay, be kind to your brothers.
Like you would like to be treated.
Treat everyone the way you would like to be treated. Treat everyone as though he was your brother. And is there anyone in this United States that we do not treat as our brothers?
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah.
The black people. Who else? Absolutely, the Indians. And when many people see a black person or a yellow person or a red person, what do they think?
Oh, look at that. Look at that. Dumb people.
They look at the dumb people. What else do they think sometimes? What kinds of things do they say about black people?
Call them niggers.
In the city, many places in the United States, how are black people treated? How are Indians treated? How are people who are of a different color than we are treated?
They're part of this world. They don't get anything in this world.
Why is that?
Because they're different color.
You think you know how that would feel to be judged by the color of your skin?
Yeah.
Do you think you do? No, I don't think you'd know how that felt unless you had been through it, would you? It might be interesting to judge people today by the color of their eyes. Would you like to try this?
Yeah.
Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Since I'm the teacher and I have blue eyes, I think maybe the blue-eyed people should be on top the first day.
Up here?
I mean, the blue-eyed people are the better people in this room. Oh, yes, they are. Blue-eyed people are smarter than brown-eyed people.
My dad isn't that stupid.
Is your dad brown-eyed?
Yeah.
One day you came to school and you told us that he kicked you.
He did.
Do you think a blue-eyed father would kick his son?
Yeah.
My dad's blue-eyed. He's never kicked me. Greg's dad is blue-eyed. He's never kicked him. Rex's dad is blue-eyed. He's never kicked him. This is a fact. Blue-eyed people are better than brown-eyed people. Are you brown-eyed or blue-eyed?
Blue.
Why are you shaking your head?
I don't know.
Are you sure that you're right? Why? What makes you so sure that you're right?
I don't know.
The blue-eyed people get 5 extra minutes of recess, while the brown-eyed people have to stay in. The brown-eyed people do not get to use the drinking fountain. You'll have to use the paper cups. You brown-eyed people are not to play with the blue-eyed people on the playground because you are not as good as blue-eyed people. Well, the brown-eyed people in this room today are going to wear collars so that we can tell from a distance what color your eyes are. On page 127. 127. Is everyone ready? Everyone but Laurie. Ready, Laurie?
Brown-eyed.
She's a brown-eyed. You'll begin to notice today that we spend a great deal of time waiting for brown-eyed people. The yardstick's gone. Well, okay. I don't see the yardstick, do you?
It's probably over there. Hey, Miss Lane, you better keep that on your desk so if the brown-eyed people get out of hand.
Oh! You think if the brown-eyed people get out of hand, that would be the thing to use? Who goes first to lunch?
Blue-eyed.
The blue-eyed people. No brown-eyed people go back for seconds. Blue-eyed people may go back for seconds. Brown-eyed people do not.
Brown-eyed.
Don't you know?
They're not smart.
Is that the only reason?
They'll take too much.
It might take too much. Okay, quietly.
And it seemed like when we were down on the bottom, everything bad was happening to us.
The way they treated you, you felt like you didn't even want to try to do anything.
It seemed like Mrs. Elliot was taking our best friends away from us.
What happened at recess? Were 2 of you boys fighting?
Yeah. Russell and John were.
What happened, John?
Russell called me names and I hit him in the gut.
What did he call you?
Brown eyes.
Did you call him brown eyes?
They always call us that. Greg and all of the boys call us brown eyes. They say, come here, brown eyes. And they were calling us blue eyes. I wasn't. Sandy and Donna were. Yeah.
What's wrong with being called brown eyes?
It means that we're stupider. Well, not that. Oh, that's just the same way as other people call black people niggers. Yeah.
Is that the reason you hit him, John? Did it help? Did it stop him? Did it make you feel better inside?
Stop Russell.
Make you feel better inside? Did it make you feel better to call him brown eyes? Why do you suppose you call him brown eyes?
Right, because he has brown eyes.
Is that the only reason? He didn't call him brown eyes yesterday and he had brown eyes yesterday. Didn't he?
Because we just saw that. Ever since you put those blue things on there. Yeah, tease them. Kind of tease them.
Oh, is this teasing?
No. Well, he did it.
Were you doing it for fun, to be funny, or were you doing it to be mean? I don't know. Don't ask me. Did anyone laugh at you when you did it? I watched what had been marvelous, cooperative, wonderful, thoughtful children turn into nasty, vicious, discriminating little 3rd graders in a space of 15 minutes. Yesterday, I told you that brown-eyed people aren't as good as blue-eyed people. That wasn't true. I lied to you yesterday. The truth is that brown-eyed people are better than blue-eyed people. Russell, where are your glasses?
I forgot them.
You forgot them. And what color are your eyes?
Blue.
Susan Ginder has brown eyes. She didn't forget her glasses.
Yeah.
Russell Ring has blue eyes, and what about his glasses?
He forgot them.
He forgot them. Yesterday we were visiting, and Greg said, "Boy, I like to hit my little sister as hard as I can. That's fun." What does that tell you about blue-eyed people?
They're naughty. They fight a lot.
The brown-eyed people may take off their collars, and each of you may put your collar on a blue-eyed person. The brown-eyed people get 5 extra minutes of recess. You blue-eyed people are not allowed to be on the playground equipment at any time. You blue-eyed people are not to play with the brown-eyed people. Brown-eyed people are better than blue-eyed people. They're smarter than blue-eyed people. And if you don't believe it, look at Brian. Do blue-eyed people know how to sit in a chair? Very sad. Very, very sad. Who can tell me what contraction should be in the first sentence? Go to the board and write it, John. Come on, let's do it again. Loosen up. Up, up, up. Come on. That's better. Now, do you know how to make a W? Okay, write the contraction for we are. Now that's beautiful writing. Is that better?
Yes.
Brown-eyed people learn fast, don't they?
Yeah.
Boy, do brown-eyed people learn fast. Very good. Greg, what did you do with that cup? Will you please go and get that cup and put your name on it and keep it at your desk? Blue-eyed people are wasteful. Okay, you want to be timed this morning?
Yeah. A.
I use Orton Gillingham Phonics. We use the card pack. And the children, the brown-eyed children, were in the low class the first day, and it took them 5.5 minutes to get through the card pack. The second day, it took them 2.5 minutes. The only thing that had changed was the fact that now they were superior people.
I thought you were going to get me.
You went faster than I ever had anyone go through the card pack. Why couldn't you get them yesterday?
We had those collars on.
You think the collars kept you?
You just keep thinking about those collars.
Oh.
I kept getting rolling around.
Oh, and you couldn't think as well with the collars on. 4 minutes and 18 seconds.
I knew we weren't going to make it.
How long did it take you yesterday?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. How long did it take you today?
4 minutes and 18 seconds.
What happened?
One down.
Why? What were you thinking of?
This.
I hate today.
How do you do? I hate too.
Because I'm blue-eyed.
See, I am too.
There's nothing, it's not funny, it's not fun, it's not pleasant. This is a filthy, nasty word called discrimination. We're treating people a certain way because they are different from the rest of us. Is that fair?
No.
Nothing fair about it. We didn't say this was going to be a fair day, did we?
No.
And it isn't. It's a horrid day. Okay, you ready? What did you people who are wearing blue collars now find out today?
Oh, you feel
I know what they felt like yesterday.
I did too.
How did they feel yesterday?
Down. Like a dog on a leash.
Yeah.
It feels like a chain
them up
wherever you go.
into prison. Like you're chaining them up into prison. And you're throwing the key away.
Should the color of some other person's eyes have anything to do with how you treat them?
No.
All right, then should the color of their skin?
No.
Should you judge people
No.
by the color of their skin?
No.
You're going to say that today and this week and probably all the time you're in this room. You'll say, "No, Mrs. Elliot." Every time I ask that question.
No.
Then,
No, Mrs. Elliot.
when you see a black man or an Indian or someone walking down the street, are you going to say, "Look at that silly looking thing"?
No. Miss.
Does it make any difference whether their skin is black or white?
No.
Or yellow?
No.
Or red?
No.
Is that how you decide whether people are good or bad?
No.
Is that what makes people good or bad?
No.
Let's take these collars off.
Hey, don't stick yourself down. No. You'd have to sort Here, Mr. Elliot, you can
What would you like to do with them?
throw them away.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. In the pit. Here, Mrs. Elliot. Eat them. Don't eat them like green.
Now you know a little bit more than you knew at the beginning of this week?
Yes. A lot.
Do you know a little bit more than you wanted to?
Yes, Miss.
This isn't an easy way to learn this, is it?
No, Miss.
Oh, well, you stop Okay, now let's all sit down here together. Blue eyes and brown eyes. Does it make any difference what color you are?
No.
Down, girl.
Don't forget to see it again.
Oh, you found your friend, huh? Now, did you get back? Okay, you ready to listen now? Okay, now are you back?
Yes.
That feel better?
Yes.
Does the color of the eyes that you have make any difference in the kind of person you are?
No, Mrs. Elliot.
Does that feel like being home again, girls?
Yes.
Oh, well, you stop it.
Today's audience was separated into two groups. Not on the color of their skin were they separated when they arrived. They were separated based on the color of their eyes. But they have no idea that they were separated. What we did was treat each group differently, discriminating against the people who have blue eyes, catering to those people with brown eyes.
Come on. What color are your eyes? Blue? Over there. Put it on. No. Over there. Blue? Over there.
The blue-eyed people were pulled out of line, told to put on a green collar and wait outside. When the brown-eyed people arrived, they were told to step to the front of the line. Audience members with brown eyes were allowed to enjoy coffee and donuts. The blue-eyed group became upset when they saw the brown-eyed people were being seated first.
Well, yeah, those people went in. What are they doing in there? Yes, what are they doing?
Diversity expert Jane Elliot helped set up the experiment.
I've been a teacher for 25 years in the public, private, and parochial schools in this country, and I have seen what brown-eyed people have done as compared to what blue-eyed people do. And it's perfectly obvious. And if I didn't believe it before this morning, you should have been here this morning when we brought these people in here.
Feeling discriminated against, the blue-eyed audience members were visibly upset.
She was rude to us, all of us. Yelled at us, called us names, pushed us aside. She was rude.
Just want to say, why doesn't Jane have a green collar on? She's got blue eyes.
Because I've learned to act brown-eyed. I have a brown-eyed husband and 3 brown-eyed children.
Why did you?
And the message in this room is, act brown-eyed and you too can take off your collar. Act intelligently and you too won't need your collar. None of you have acted intelligently yet.
It wasn't long before the brown-eyed people bought into the idea that they were superior.
You people, look, it is... People, I had a girlfriend in school who was blue-eyed. She was so stupid. She was always copying off of my papers. These people were so rude and so noisy today, we couldn't hear ourselves even talk. It was ridiculous.
Eventually, the audience figured out the show was really about race. Now, he was so angry, he took off his collar way on early.
How many of you people of color can take off the collar that we have put on you? How many of you can take off your color? But if a black male refused to follow your orders, or your husband's orders, or your father's orders on the street, you would not see that as being highly principled. You would see him as being an uppity nigger.
Well, we can see where this is going. She's saying that everybody has racism in them. It's not really about the eye. She's trying to teach about racism. But she can't get away from the fact that God created the races, and you are going to be different. You can't help it.
God
to be like
created
that.
one race, the human race, and human beings created racism.
We caught up with the mastermind behind the eye color test. Jane Elliot is her name, 22 years later.
I loved teaching. I started the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise because Martin Luther King Jr. had been one of our heroes of the month in February in my third grade classroom, and he was dead at the hands of an assassin. I hate to talk about this because every time I talk about it, I remember how it felt that day. I was going to have to go into my classroom and explain to my students why the adults in this country had allowed somebody to kill hope. Because Martin Luther King, for me, was hope for this country. I decided that the next day I was going to do what Hitler did. I was going to pick out a group of people on the basis of a physical characteristic over which they had no control, separate them according to the color of their eyes, treat one group badly and treat the other group very well, and see what would happen. Eye color and skin color are caused by the same chemical, melanin. There is no logic in judging people by the amount of a chemical in their skin. Pigmentation should have nothing to do with how you treat another person, but unfortunately it does. Give me a child at the age of 8, let me do that exercise, and that child is changed forever.
Okay, so we have seen two very, very eye-opening videos, at least I thought they were. And we're going to listen to you now. What did you learn? We want to hear from you. What did you learn?
It seems like the internet is working now.
You can type in the chat box, or you can open up your line and speak. But we want you to engage in this conversation. What did you learn? What things stood out to you? Okay, for those of you who were able to see the video, and you, especially of the experiment of the children, were you able to see any major changes in the body language of the children?
Someone said, I thought it was a powerful message. It gave insight. It was amazing how quickly the children bought into stereotypes.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what, okay, go ahead.
I think the fact that their opinions of themselves changed right away, the way it affected their learning.
Keep typing away, and I'll keep asking. So, with these children, they had 2 days to do this. There were negative and positive labels placed on these children, and they responded accordingly. What happens when we do this with differences, races, consistently, 200 years, 400 years? What happened?
Children looked at the teacher as an authoritative figure and concluded Jane's thought was true.
So I need you to hear this. Pull that back down. Children looked at the teacher, and the teacher represents the dominant culture as an authoritative figure and concluded that the dominant culture's thought was true for them. It was also surprising that once, this is another comment, it was surprising that once they were told they were superior or inferior, how their behavior changed. How do we see that play out in the workplace, within our communities? When the dominant culture, and here's the thing, I hope everybody understands this, that the dominant culture isn't always white. The dominant culture isn't in certain situations isn't always straight. If you're in a community and this particular, whatever that dominant culture is, remember that voice is conveying a label. So here are some other comments.
How easy it was for this teacher to get her point across. It was shocking how quickly they turned on each other. One of my staff actually participated in this experiment in 3rd grade, said it was a very powerful lesson. I've used this video in my classes for years. The first time I was concerned about the responses I'd received, but each and every time there was an aha moment. It's very powerful, and I've actually found videos of Jane Elliot doing the same exercise in prison. Extremely moving.
I was more intrigued by the Oprah video clip because of the age of the audience. This is a comment. So I just want to point this out. This was, I think, 2005, 2006. I did this experiment. I did it by hair color. At the time, my hair color was darker, so I went by anyone who had blonde hair. And we split the groups up. We placed the blonde-haired individuals in a room with one chair, and there was nothing else in that room. The other room where the darker-haired people went, there were chairs, there was refreshment, we had music, there was laughter. It was all of this wonderfulness. When it was time to bring people together, I will forever remember this one woman. She was blonde hair, of course, because she was in that room, and she was pregnant. She came in and she was furious. The example that you saw in the Oprah's video, that's exactly what I saw. And even at the end of the training, once she realized what it was all about, I still do not believe that she was able to come down from that space where she had gotten herself into. And what I tried to convey to the group that day is that you had 15 to 20 minutes at the most to be treated differently. What about people who've been treated this way for years and years? So talk to us. Talk to us. We're sitting here and we want to keep this going. We have more comments.
It was eye-opening to see how easily swayed we are as the human race, both children and adults, how messaging is so powerful, the extreme power of those who control the messaging.
It is? Yes. Yes.
It was eye-opening to see how much it impacted their academic performance.
Absolutely. I want to point this out. If you remember, there were 2 sets of numbers that were shared. The first group, when they were considered the superior group, they did this test, the test that they were taking, they did it in 2.5 minutes. After they were in the inferior group, the same test took 5.5 minutes. The second group, 3 minutes versus 4.18 seconds. It makes a difference. Now, if this is happening in schools, What about in the workplace? What about in the workplace? We have more comments here.
I actually used Jane Elliott's experiment in conjunction with the Mark Dahl experiment.
Okay.
It shows us how much impact and influence we have on those around us and how we treat others. We have a lot of power to change the community we live in. It was amazing how the children's confidence in themselves was diminished when they were in a non-dominant group. Says a lot about how successful or unsuccessful kids can be based on how they are treated. Conditioning people is much easier in a controlled environment. Great point, Fannie. The children who were the target of the hatred believed the lie that they were inferior, that they are the problem, that they are less worthy. This is called internalized oppression.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'd like for you to think for a moment. This was a question when Jane brought all of those children as adults back together again 17 years later. She asked them, should this video be shown in schools today? I'd like to hear from you. Should we do this exercise in our classrooms today? We'd like to hear from you. I see a yes. I see an absolutely, absolutely yes. After I showed this video in one of my classes, one of my students shared that as a Black person, his mom prepared him from a young age that that he will have to learn to accept that he will be judged and not treated fairly based on his skin color. This is something, if you haven't seen the movie, The Hate U Give, that is a very moving movie. If you're wanting to see something about what a lot of Black parents are saying to their young children, especially their boys, more.
Shows how we need to be building and encouraging self-esteem in the classroom. So many people feel badly about themselves that it becomes easy to be influenced to treat others badly. Much of this comes from how we are taught to look at ourselves. I will make sure my children see this tonight. I have seen the real effect of how discrimination affects Black people and what it does to my 4 Black children now grown. Self-esteem and how the world and their place in the world. Try as they may, they still can't get those collars off.
And here's the thing about whether it is disability, race, sexual orientation, you can't take those collars off. They are there. And it's not a bad thing. It is when the dominant culture, be it in the workplace, be it in the community, be it in other places, whenever they say something that is sending a message that is contrary to unity, you have the right to stop it.
Our country needs this now more than ever. It's worth noting that this exercise did lead to a confrontation violence among some of the children. I'm curious to see the long-term effects on what the experiment had on the children.
Well, I'll tell you, there was a video, and it's probably about 7 minutes long. What they did, they showed the follow-up 17 years later with these children as adults, maybe a little bit longer, because several of them brought their spouses with them. And one husband spoke of his wife, who was a part of the experiment. He said one of the reasons that he was so pleased that she had agreed to be his wife because he was going to be in the military. And he knew that he was going to be traveling around the world and encountering a lot of differences. And as a result of that, he was concerned that she wouldn't be able to handle the differences based on where he met her in Iowa. But because she had gone through this experiment, she sailed through all the interaction, the introductions, because she accepted people as they were. Another man spoke, and these are as adults, another man spoke of his wife having gone through that experiment and said he was so proud of her because they're teaching their children that you accept people for who they are, judge them by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin.
I look forward to continually being an agent for change for social equality. One of the biggest takeaways could be how fragile self-esteem can be, and I think of bullying too, especially in schools and on social media.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So here's my question to you. Have you seen these behaviors today in the workplace? In your communities? If so, what could we do about it? What can we do about this when we see these behaviors? Talk to us. We're here listening in, and we want to hear what you have to say.
If you treat someone with dignity, even if they have made bad choices, it is amazing how it helps them to begin making positive choices.
This is so true. This is very, very true.
Feel free to unmute yourself too.
Yes, please feel free to unmute yourself, have a conversation with us. Totally open to that because this is a platform for conversation. There are some brave souls out there. Please feel free.
I also found it interesting that the teacher mentioned American Indians often, and now in days they are rarely mentioned.
That is very true. And we're going to do something about that, aren't we?
I think this training should be mandatory as sexual conduct training.
So be it. I agree 100%.
I think that the main reason that I use these videos in my class is because I see them.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And we see it all around us. And I'll tell you, whenever I see videos like this, it does cause me to pause and to check myself because I think it is so important.
The behaviors happen all the time. We have to confront negative behaviors and educate for change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We must do this. We must.
Work at not falling into the trap of the negative attitude. Find a way to say something positive, or they give a different way to look at things.
Absolutely. These are very positive responses.
I use my white privilege to advocate for my children, and I try to educate people who do not understand.
That is so, yes, that is so important. I gotta tell you, white privilege, this is a great opportunity to start conversations around things like this, especially during this time. There are so many groups that are marginalized, so many individuals that are overlooked. We have some more comments coming. I like that.
I like that the parents were actually there to see the experiment. I think that teaching children about racism is important, but having the parents engaged will have a greater impact on the children learning.
Okay, I want to comment to that. What you saw in the video between seeing a clip of the adult and then the face of the child, actually they were the same people as adults. Those children you saw in the video were the adults later that you saw. So it weren't the parents watching on, these were the children.
But do you know if the parents were like informed of it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The parents had to give permission. But I thought it was interesting, I'm so glad you brought that up, watching the expression of the children as adults, looking back at how they responded to this experiment was huge. I thought it was huge.
Sometimes when someone is in an authoritative position, they are more unaware of their behavior and actions and how it truly affects others.
That could, I tell you, that is so true. You know what I always find interesting is many times I'm asked to come out and conduct training, and over the years, and the director or the senior team don't feel that they need to be a part of that training. They believe their staff need to be a part of that training, but they don't need to be a part of that. And so hats off to those directors and senior staff that stays in the room because they know we all can learn. We have more questions?
The adults are harder to teach. The children behave what they see and learn how to behave based on the adults around them.
They're harder, but they can be taught. I know my husband said to me, you know, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I reminded him that he wasn't a dog. So we can learn. So what I am thinking, I have some more questions and comments here. Here's some thought, and I'm sure I've been hearing some of these. With minimal cues like eyes, and Jane has also used minimal cues like the curling of the tongue. Those who curl their tongue, some people can't. She said, can cause discrimination when the dominant culture places value on the cue. I think, wow, it's true. It is so true. If as a parent, I tell my child, you stay away from that white kid down the street. You stay away from that black kid down the street. That's a big message. Here's the other thing, and this was something that came out in another video. When Jane asked the class as adults, when power was reversed, instead of compassion, why did you act the way you did? And here's the response. I felt drunk with power. That means when they took the collar off and it went to the next child, they felt drunk with power and forgot what it felt like when they were discriminated against. I think sometimes we have to really dig in and think, what does it feel like to be? Complete the statement, whatever that might be. If there are more comments.
If you teach the children, they will teach the parents. I think this opens up awareness of not only racial prejudice, but bias against many other groups, gender, ability, etc. Just like the no smoking. One of the best ways of helping children and adults to change negative attitudes is to help them build their own self-esteem. It always comes down to how we feel about ourselves. Unfortunately, we are taught from a young age that happiness comes from external and not from within ourselves.
Powerful statement. Very powerful. Very, very powerful. Because I think that was interesting that a color could change your perspective of yourself. And it's so important as adults that we remember. I thought it was an interesting comment that Jane Elliot made on the Oprah show when someone said to her, you have blue eyes, why don't you have a color? And her comment was, I now act brown eyes, and I married someone who had brown-eyed children, or something to that effect. Do you think that oftentimes not people do that assimilation so they can not feel discriminated against? Yeah.
In the workplace, I think the dynamic is different. It's really sensitive because your livelihood could be at stake or your job may be threatened if you're seen as not conforming or challenging the current system power structure.
So here's my question. The comment is my question. Can you take your consciousness off when you're in the workplace? Can you take your mind out when you're in the workplace? Although sometimes people feel that way. But seriously, can you, if I'm at home and I have a problem with working for a woman or working for someone who is white, when I arrive in the workplace, can I take that off? I can behave just enough not to get fired, but underneath, it has to bleed through. Hatred just bleeds through.
If you choose to speak up at work, you are often seen as rebellious.
What do you mean when you say speak up? Please, what do you mean? Like pointing out that, that something is, you're being discriminated against, or what do you mean about speaking up at work?
If you confront someone on the treatment not being across the board.
Oh.
Being confrontational.
Oh, you consider being confrontational. Usually, if you can keep the emotions out of the conversation and stay with the facts, not what I feel, what I think, but stick with the facts, usually people will listen. At work, you can simply just focus on the work and put your emotions, perceptions aside.
There are still power dynamics that exist.
Absolutely. There are power dynamics that exist. And yeah, but not everyone can do that. This is true. This is true. Not everyone can. But here's what we can do. We can decide, we can make a decision that, you know what, that perhaps this person is having a bad day. Maybe that person is having a bad day. Okay, comments, questions. I cannot believe no one has opened up the phone and start talking. All right.
I too was taken aback by the difference in the adults' action, righteous indignation, as opposed to the children's reactions, more like the light bulb going on. I suppose because the children have not experienced as many interactions.
Children are so truthful. I mean, I'm telling you, they're so organic, they're so raw. They haven't been spoiled with all of that politically correct stuff just yet. So they're just plain out there in your face.
They have no filter.
No filter. That's the word I was looking for. There it is. Love it. I see that someone said I would love to do this in person. Interesting. Like I said, I did this.
Didn't do it.
I did it. Oh, I'd love to do this again. I did it, and I gotta tell you, people, oh my gosh, it was delightful on my part. Not to those light-colored people, light-colored haired people who was in that other room. They were furious. They were exactly like those people were on Oprah. I am not kidding you. The person who was with me, who attended training, she said to me, she said, I'm going to go out and start the engine. So start the motor up in the car, because I think some of these people are going to take body parts off of you. Okay.
Unfortunately, fear is powerful and paralyzes, and most people are afraid to rock the boat, and that is what negative people count on.
That is a very powerful statement there. I think most, not just negative people, but people who are coward, count on people not rocking the boat. And I think, I choose to think that I'm not rocking the boat by bringing this platform to all of you. I choose to believe that what I'm doing it's opening up an opportunity for conversations. And I choose to believe that all those people who feel that I am rocking the boat, your problem. Your problem. So we have to keep talking. We do.
It's difficult to change negative people. You can only change the way you react to them. Sometimes that is easier said than done, especially in the workplace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I'll tell you, once you realize who you are, and I think that's the message here, is that you have to first come to grips with who you are and know who you are. And once that happens, the other stuff, the peripheral stuff, you can pretty much manage that because it doesn't have to become your story.
Rocking the boat is important because that is how we begin to change our perspective. Pain is a great motivator.
Yes, it is. So is discomfort. So is discomfort.
Sometimes a conversation is necessary and can make a change / better understanding, keep the environment positive.
Absolutely. And here's where I have somewhat of a pushback. Today, a lot of people want to be in an environment where it is friction-free. And they are very conscious of, we want to make sure everybody gets along. We want to make sure that there's no conflict. And we want to make sure that there's no rocking the boat. And I say it is impossible to work in an environment where equity and diversity is supported and not have conflict. The essence is getting through the conflict because you're going to have it. It's impossible. It is impossible. And I think many are uncomfortable with the discomfort that diversity brings. And that's the part we all have to get through, all of us. The essence is getting through the discomfort.
I don't think such a place exists, and rocking the boat can be a good thing.
Rock on. We say rock on. Rock on because, we're at that time.
Yeah.
So those people live in a dream world. It's difficult, but it's learning how to communicate. It's not what it's said, it's how it's said. Tone makes a big difference. I don't want to leave this. Tone makes a big difference. These are great comments. Even though you didn't open up your, keep going. Not the thank you next. Yeah. So here's a thought I'd like to leave with you. Because we are out of time, believe it or not. So as soon as we get the thought, we're going to get it back up there. There it is. Here it is. I'm going to go to the
Oh, I thought I already did it.
No, just leave it. So here we are. The Heroic Imagination Project. This is what they had to say. The time has come, this is what Dr. Phillips had to say. The time has come for us all to help create and enjoy a new psychology of liberation. It is a compassionate call to arms in opposing all those forces, both within and without each individual, that diminish the potential for human perfection. It is an invitation to join in a global community that supports those forces that will strengthen the bond of the human condition, starting with justice, peace, and love. In the end, I believe that each of us has the ability to make a difference in improving the human condition through acts of kindness, generosity of spirit, and a vision that always seeks to make others feel special, worthwhile, understood, and embraced as our kin. especially when they're not of our kind. I have one last slide I'd like to leave with you, and that is, what will you do with what you heard and experienced today? And we all say thank you, and thank you. Yes, and we will see you next month. Watch for the notice for August, and we want you to have the best day ever. Thank you for joining us.